Hey, welcome, buddy. Hopefully this will be lively and entertaining on a subject we love and adore, cancel culture. Yeah, we've been trying to talk about something like this for a while, and I was reaching out to somebody that I know, Ian Michaels Cheong. You guys may know him as Still Gray. He's pretty infamous on Twitter. We got a little... is that my echo? Who we got echo from? I think it's from Ian. Ian, is that... Could be. You know what? Let's get this out of the way real quick because we got some audio things to deal with because I'm using Slobs, and for some reason, Slobs is really weird how it does its audio things. And so I have to check each time with my audience, make sure that everything's working right. So real quick in the audience, let me know if you can hear me just fine. How's my audio level? Then we're going to get In Time in here because I'm joined with them, both Asgard and Nick, co-creators of In Time, although Nick does 95% of the work, but don't tell Asgard that. So let's see if they can hear you guys. So Nick, can you give us a real quick audio thing? Oh, you're going up with inflation. It used to be $400. Yeah. All right. So for some reason they're saying you are muted. So let me fix that real quick. Because Nick just said he was a $500 student rather than $400. All right, try now, Nick. I just changed one thing that I'm not sure if it works or not. So go ahead and.
It's me again, and it is $500. The cloth comes from China. Tariffs. It's a big deal. I'm never going to forgive Trump. What can I say?
All right. So how is that? You guys hear Nick pretty well? I will turn down my audio a little bit. All right, that worked. Awesome. Asgard, how about you?
The hat actually does 95% of the work. Just saying.
Is that a magical hat? Is it like the sorting hat from Harry Potter?
It is. It's the streaming hat. It puts the stream together for us, and it even gives us all of our show ideas.
Actually, what we've discovered is what you're hearing now is in fact the hat. It's wearing Ansgar.
Oh,
and
this is true. It's
a nice hat. This is true. In fact, I identify as a leather top hat wearing a fat neck beard.
Asgard, you're just basically a fashion accessory now. All right. So last but not least, let's get to our guest. Somebody I've known for quite some time. He's been on the Non Sequitur show before, and he's been on my channel quite some time, which I know there's going to be haters out there that are going to be lambasting this in perpetuity for quite some time. Ian, how you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on.
First, make sure the people out there can actually hear Ian, and let's just get preliminaries out of the way. Ian, you're a controversial person.
I guess so. I guess so.
You have been involved in a lot of drama, going all the way back to Gamergate. Matter of fact, I think it's pretty well.
All the way back. I used to be on the other side. I used to be what some people would call a social justice warrior. Yeah.
And even though I really wasn't around in those days, I remember some of it, and I've seen some of your older stuff. Very comical, by the way. But I like the fact that you've looked. I like it because he's looked back and go, God damn, what the hell was I thinking? And I think that's a growth of a person, right? I actually applauded him for the change that he's had over the years. But for people that are just finding out about you and stuff like that, a lot of them were like, oh, do you know this person did this and that? Look. Here's all I'm going to say on it because I put the link in the video description on something that I did a long time ago for Keemstar to show him that Keemstar was, I think, kind of off the mark. So I did a little bit of analysis when people were talking about the whole flashbang dog dying kind of crap. That link is in the video description. If anybody wants to go read that, they're more than welcome to. I've already found 100% that I believe that was totally fabricated. That event never happened. I saw the hangout where it was talked about. I saw the hangout where that was only a hypothetical. You were playing along with it, and you didn't realize that they were seriously saying. They weren't actually seriously talking.
They were not serious, and nobody
serious.
there was serious. Everybody present knew they were making a joke, and I was playing along because everyone was, play acting, right?
Right.
And then afterwards, some people took it out of context. I mean, some of the people within that conversation itself tried to pretend that it was serious. Right? It blew my mind.
Yeah, so I listened to that hangout and I have the transcripts, and I actually, if anybody wants them, I'll send them the transcripts because the hangout is now deleted. But the transcripts are not because I copied them. But the transcripts are very clear that they said if somebody, because you guys were having talking about doxing, and it was like if somebody doxes somebody and they get the wrong address, and let's say a dog dies, then what? That was the hypothetical.
Yep.
Right. So that got turned into trolls and haters taking that and going, oh, well, Ian doxed this, and then he had a dog killed, and then he admitted to it. None of that shit ever happened. None of it.
God.
It was ridiculous.
Oh my God!
Made it up. It's a fiction.
Wait. Oh, he made it up. So he is admitting here and now that he's a liar and that he invented the whole story for subs.
Like,
We got it. We got
Those guys definitely got a bunch of subs from it. The dude, who I quote unquote doxed, I never doxed him, right? The dude made a video claiming I did this stuff. He was trying to collect thousands of dollars in donations for a dog that never existed.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I remember he had a GoFundMe or something for the dead dog that didn't exist, and I'm like, and you're getting labeled the bad guy. Okay.
Yep. Good times.
But here's the thing on that. People are going to say whatever they want about it. All you have to do to convince me is send me an email of a video of any of this, of the actual event happening, the actual dog dying, or a police report. That's it. Because I really have looked into this and found nothing.
My phone crashed.
Oh, so, well, I just wanted to know before we go further, what was the name of the guy that you didn't dox? I'm sorry, I had
I don't want to bring those guys' names up.
Feeling feisty. Oh no, I didn't mean it for that. I meant it. It was a joke. But yeah, no, good point.
Why is my screen goes to crap sometimes? Right. If somebody leaves the call, then it goes to crap. But anyways, and it should have went Skype because I use NDI. But anyways, let's talk about what we're going to actually get into here because I know there's going to be a cancel culture event going on. People are going to say, "Why do you have Ian on?" Well, I like what Ian has to say sometimes, occasionally. I don't always agree with him. He doesn't always agree with me. But I happen to like.
That's the beauty of
Yeah, go ahead.
That's the beauty of being on the internet, right? Not everyone's going to agree with you.
Yeah, and I mean, I like agreeable people. I don't like people. People have this narrative: you have to agree with Steve, or Steve's going to block you. And I keep trying to explain to people, I wouldn't have a show if everybody agreed with me.
That's right.
Are you telling me that you're allowed to talk and associate with people who you don't agree with?
Yeah, and I tell people have asked me, well, Steve, I still associate with another person. And I'm like, okay, that's your prerogative. Don't expect me to, but I'm not going to tell you. You're a grown man or a grown woman or non-binary, whatever you want to be. I'm not going to tell you what you can and cannot do. I don't have these marching orders that people think. I don't have these supplicants that bow down to me and say, whatever Steve says, I'm going to go do it, except for Nikki. She doesn't count. I own her. That's a different thing altogether, okay? But anyways, let's get started with this. Ian, kind of tell us a little bit about cancel culture and how you get involved in it, because I definitely think it is something that does exist. I do see it. I do see people advocating, let's not have this person of our platform. Let's not let them speak their mind. So what say you on it?
Well, I think that if you're going to accuse somebody of something, you should offer them a platform to counter what you're saying, because otherwise, it's you're having a kangaroo court. I mean, we have this court of public opinion, right? And that's going to exist in one form or another. You can't stop it from existing. And you can bitch and moan about how, oh God, I wish the court of public opinion didn't exist. That's a pipe dream, right? That's going to exist. So at the very minimum, you can minimize the damage, or at least if you really are intent on canceling someone, at least offer them the opportunity to either hang themselves or defend themselves. I don't know. It's up to them if they want to protect themselves, right? So I think people should have the right to speak. If someone's going to accuse you of anything, listen to them. At least hear them out before deciding, oh yeah, that's a bad person, I'm going to cancel them.
Well, let's analyze that real quick, and then I want to get In Time's opinion on this. By the way, In Time, loving your guys' stuff. I hope you guys have phenomenal success.
Thank you.
And I can see the work that goes into it. And I tell people, this stuff is not as easy as it appears. So,
No.
You guys find out the hard way that I was right on that. But so I think there are times to address your critics, absolutely, and when it's a fair and valid criticism. However, we all know from experience there's unfair and invalid criticisms out there to be had that are levied against people just for the fact that they want your attention.
Mm-hmm.
So, Ian, when you have critics that want to get your attention, because you have a large following, you got about 100,000 Twitter followers, you've been around a very long time. When they want your attention and they go about it the wrong way by trying to criticize you for things that are either personal, like, for example, you've been personally attacked numerous times, which I find to be vile, but there's a difference between personally attacking you and attacking the things you say, because if you say something and I don't agree with you, I'm going to tell you. So how do you make that distinction of when you're going to respond to somebody attacking you with fair criticism and unfair criticism?
I think you can generally tell, right, based on what they tell me. Like, say, personally, if someone doesn't like my opinions, they'll tell me. Like, I'll look at it on Twitter or wherever it is they decide to talk to me on. They'll say something like, okay, I don't like your opinion, and here's why, right? And they list it out. They might explain themselves, or they might just say, this is a bad opinion, but I want to know why they think so. So I'll respond to those that seem like they're in good faith. But if they say something like, I shouldn't speak because I'm, say, a Nazi or something. I'm not a Nazi, but if they call me one, then I know not to respond, because that's, feeding the troll, taking the bait, right? Because I know that they're not serious if that's how they're going to treat me. And this is what you see in general. Like, when someone gets called out, they can be called out for a bad idea. This happens all the time, and that's fair, right? That's fine. But if someone's calling you out and they're basing it on your identity, that's when you know it's in bad faith. So let's say, you got Ilhan Omar. She's said a lot of bad, stupid things, right? And maybe some of you in the audience might actually enjoy what she says. I don't know. I don't care, right? So, when I see people address the stuff that she says and says, okay, here's why you're wrong, Ilhan, and these are the allegations that are against you, or these are the things that you said that I disagree with, and here's why, like, she's well within her rights to respond and say, okay, so you're wrong because so and so. But what I've noticed is that she tends to fall back on defending herself by calling herself a woman of color, right? That's not a defense. That's like me saying, oh, you can't you can't criticize me because I'm Asian. Like, that's ridiculous, right? So,
okay. So, by the way, I got a super chat real quick. I got to read those. Ozzy Globehead, thank you, Ozzy, man, awesome. Dude, $100 Australian. He says this will help with your 5%. This will help with your 5% of graphics work, Steve. You know what? I have Nick does 95% of my work now. That's all I keep him around for. He just does all
Well,
of it.
no, Ansgar and I actually, just because people have been asking, I want to get this set up. Ansgar and I have an even split. All right, he does 95% of the work, and I take 95% of the credit. And
that's a healthy relationship.
That's what I think.
Get that in writing. But thank
Well,
you, Ozzy
Kyle's
Globehead.
lawyer
on it.
crafted up our deal, so
He's amazing. By the way, I have a 5% 5% finder's fee for Kyle's lawyer. So,
Okay.
yeah. But anyways, so to talk about these people that I have said we know are trolls. We know that will, like you said, use terms like Nazi. As soon as I hear things like that, I tune out.
I tune out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you do.
I'm not going to
Yeah.
invest my time with it. Now, like recently, I have controversial guests on, and you know what? This channel will have controversial guests on, and nobody's going to tell me who I can and cannot platform. And if they got a problem with it, they can watch it or don't watch it. It really makes no difference to me. People think I do these things for views. I probably lose views or subs by having you on. I'm okay with that, because those are the subs that I think are the types to say, oh, you can't have this person on, and if you do have them on, I'm not going to watch, or I'm going to unsub. Okay, whatever. But I want to be known as a channel that willing to take chances and willing to have people on, willing to have those types of dialogues, right? But I had somebody on like recently where I was labeled a rape apologist, even though I looked into the stuff. I happen to believe the guy's story. He does really great work in the community, and yet, as somebody noted, a rape apologist is somebody who says, "Oh, look what she was wearing. She deserved it. Oh, she was asking for it." Those are rape apologist types comments. Not saying I think a person was maybe innocently or it was convicted unfairly, or was innocent rather than guilty, right? Because we all know that innocent people don't go to jail, right? Oh, come on. I mean, if that was the case, that any person fighting for a black person that was wrongly convicted, which happens frequently, because I think that there's a disparagement in the judicial system there, then would they be, oh, well, I believe this black person didn't commit the crime or didn't commit murder. Are they murder apologists? That's the type of trolling that I see a lot, right? When people,
it's like Emmett Till, right? Emmett Till, woman lied about him, he died, right? As a result of that lie. Now, everyone protecting him, are they all rape apologists now because they decided to question the narrative? I don't think it would be, fair to call them rape apologists. So why is it fair to call anyone who, decides to give somebody the benefit of the doubt and say, hey, maybe we should pause and ask questions, right?
And I'm all for that too. Isn't that what skeptics are supposed to do? And even when you have people that are, these things like, oh, here's like the conviction report and stuff like that. I bet a lot of them never actually asked the actual person. They didn't go to the source, right? They get through secondary sources. And I go directly to the source. And so I might know things that they might know, or vice versa. But I have my own opinions, and I will voice my opinions, and I will stand by opinions. And opinions don't make you a rape apologist, or they don't make you somebody who's like a Nazi sympathizer like that. I might have JP on. I don't agree with him on crap when it comes to race realism, right? I think he is a racist, but that doesn't make me a race sympathizer or a race apologist or anything like that, right? But Nick, do you want to chime in this real quick, because you've seen this firsthand. You've actually experienced exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely, and we actually already did a show on that for precisely that reason. And I think just the simplest way I could put it, it's 95% of what you just said, and I didn't mean to say that, but you know what I mean. It's largely what you said. I would put it as, so the apologist does not deny that the events happened. They just say the events are either okay, or there's no, they try to change the narrative around the events. Whereas, what we're discussing here is saying that either the person's innocent, or we have a different interpretation of what the actual facts are.
Right.
So an apologist accepts the facts and says, but here's why it was okay. This is why
they make excuses for it.
Yeah.
Oh well, he attacked her, but you see what she was wearing, that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, or she deserved it, or she didn't say no, or she said no and then changed. All of those they accept the facts that it happened. The question is, how are we going to view it and interpret it, and how much are we going to hang the guy for it? The other one is, no, it did not happen. And so if you say, listen, I know for a fact that when you can even say, yes, this woman may have been raped, but I was hanging out with the guy that you convicted of doing it at a 7-Eleven 16 miles away at that exact moment, so I know he didn't do it. You're not a rape apologist. Right. It's over.
So Ian, let's declare the air on that. You never admitted to any of this stuff because none of this stuff ever happened. You can't. Let me explain to the audience. You can't admit to something that did not occur. I am convinced that the incident that we're referring to did not happen. I spent days looking into this. I watched.
You did.
Hours.
You did.
Of
you
video
asked
footage.
questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. You asked questions. You asked me hard questions. Right?
I did. I rode you.
Yeah.
I rode you hard, and I got to tell you, he got back to me and DM'd me, and he responded as truthfully as anybody ever has, and I appreciate that.
You're welcome. No, like,
So
and a lot of people are like, Ian, why don't you just apologize? Right? They're like, Ian, why don't you just say sorry for it? And I'm like, why would I apologize for something I never did?
Right.
Right.
And
why would I? Why would anyone?
If I think I did something wrong, I apologize. I heard a friend a couple months ago, a friend of mine that actually helps me on the GDC channel, and I was in a bad mood. I was stressed out over other things. I yelled at him on the phone, and I felt really, really bad for that. I mean, I really felt bad. When I do something wrong, when I know that I'm in the wrong, I will apologize profusely, right? And I did, right? But I'm not going to apologize when people say, well, sure, why don't you apologize, Steve? Well, either A, I didn't think I did something wrong, or you're making shit up, and I'm not going to apologize for that. Ansgard, go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm still going over you writing Ian Miles Cheong hard, but
I have class and let that one go, Ansgar. I'm just saying that.
Just saying, oh my.
Don't ask, don't tell. I'll tell you this. I will make this offer. Since Aussie Globehead, and I hope he doesn't mind, Aussie Globehead approves. Since he donated 100 Australian, which I think is about 60, somewhat $70 American. If somebody can find me a police report of an instance where this flashbang occurred and the dog died relating to Ian in that particular city, and I have all the details, if they could find me a police report, I will donate that to charity of their choice. Is that fine? And I guarantee it, nobody's going to send me one.
You know, I'll do you a favor. I'll match it. Whatever it is, people donate. I'll match it if you can actually find a police report.
So that's like $150 right there to the charity of your choice. If you can find us a police report, because I searched, I couldn't find crap, and I know where this supposedly took place. There was one video that was out there, which was a completely different incident.
It's halfway across the country.
Yeah. It was like, wait, this is not in the same state as the person that supposedly this happened in. It wasn't the same year. I think it was barely the same decade. But anyways, so any of the people out there, let's just leave it at that. And there you go. So, I mean, I will put my money where my mouth is. You have put your money where your mouth is. I am convinced without a doubt this never happened, because I heard the original hangout that's no longer there, where it was completely a hypothetical situation. And then you were playing along with it. And you're like, oh, yeah, and I killed a dog. You were just playing along with it. But they took that out of context because, of course, that's what trolls do. But
that's what the IBS crowd does. All right, that's Internet Blood Sports for you.
Yeah, and by the way, we have our own version of that crowd in our own little communities too. But here's the thing: people know the trolls nowadays. They've been outed. They've outed themselves because they've been so dishonest. And so when it comes to this cancel culture, let me ask you, if a troll, like for example, I won't have specific people on this channel. Never. I won't even mention their names. I haven't mentioned certain names for years. What will you allow as far as if you were in charge of a platform, of event, who would you have on? Who would you not have on? And for somebody to say, "Oh, look, Ian's doing cancel culture." Excuse me.
I wouldn't have on anyone who is, has certifiably, done something wrong, something bad to somebody else. Like seriously bad. When I say something seriously bad, I'm dancing on the issue here, but if you've raped somebody, for example, I don't think you should belong to any platform. I think you should be deplatformed, if anything. Like a lot of people are like, oh, Ian is one of those guys who believes in, platforming everybody. No, I don't. Like I admit it in the, admitted—it's like a strong word, but as I sit to Destiny in the stream that we did, right? You moderated it. He was, I think, expecting me to say that I think everybody should be platformed. No, I don't. I think that platforms are private for the most part, right? I'm not talking about free speech here. This is not like a violation of their First Amendment rights. I think these people should be allowed to speak wherever it is they do have a platform. But I am not obligated, and you are not obligated to give them that platform. So let's say you're running an event, right? And it's an event on maybe the skeptic community or whatever, right? I don't think you're obligated to just give everybody a platform just because they asked for it. If they, if they've done something seriously bad, if they've, committed crimes or whatever, then it's your prerogative to decide whether they deserve that or not, because it's your platform at the end of the day.
I completely agree. Let me ask Ansgard real quick. You're running a channel now, and so you have a platform.
Right.
I'm the same way as Ian just said. I will decide who comes on, who comes off. That is solely my discretion.
Sure.
I'm very flexible in it, to say the least, but it is ultimately my discretion. When you guys are you going to be doing on-time situations where you're going to have people come on, or are you just going to be talking about certain events? And how would you handle this? I'm curious from your platform now.
Well, there's a few things. First of all, whether to or not to platform somebody, for me, has more to do with how relevant they are to the topic. And sometimes platforming a truly hateful individual, a truly awful individual, can be a very good thing, depending contextually on how you do it. The other thing is I really think that only touches on the smallest part of something that's very tangentially related to what cancel culture is. And I see that there's some people in the chat that are actually asking what really is cancel culture. And cancel culture is, and they call themselves this, it's a phenomenon of where they've decided you've done something bad on the internet or in real life, and they find you, they talk to your employer. Even if you're a small person, they haven't just done this to stars, they've done this to other people. They talk to your employers, they try to get you fired, they try to basically end your entire life, as far as being able to earn a living or exist. And they proudly call themselves, cancel culture. I'd also like to say that this is hardly a new phenomenon. I sort of tweeted about this earlier, where, we can look back at a famous incident with the Beatles. They misspoke, right? They said, we're bigger than Jesus. And what they meant was we sold more copies of our album than the Bible. And there was a moral panic. And people burned their albums in the streets, and they wanted them off the radio, and they wanted their records no longer sold in stores. The only difference is that was done in the age before the internet. Moral panic is which is what cancel culture really is. It's just moral panic in the digital age, and that's really all that's happened. But as to who to platform and who not to, I think when we're talking about our little platforms, it's a very different thing to I want them off the internet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you're right though. They will viciously go after people. Luckily, I don't have to report to anybody. I don't have a boss that I have to worry about. And by the way, when I did have somebody that I was working with, not mention anybody in specific, legal reasons right now, but even then, they're not my boss, right? They're not somebody who I have to legit report to in type of a situation where you have to work, full time, 40 hours a week, 60 hours a week, 80 hours a week. We've all done these things. And of course, my landlord, he knows all about this stuff. And anybody went to go bitch to my landlord about me, he would wreck them, right? So it really doesn't affect me. I'm allowed to say what I want now without fear of that. But I guarantee it, if that wasn't the case, they would be coming after me. I had people talk about my landlord before. I've had people, talk about. I had one person do a background check on me just so they can find a bankruptcy I did in like 2000 something. I mean, so they want to get you off the net, right? There's been the thing for Ian here. I mean, you've had people go after you personally. You wouldn't have those people on your platform. If I mean, you don't do much on YouTube anymore, but you wouldn't platform them, would you? If there's somebody that you know is going after you personally?
Oh, hell no.
Yeah.
Hell no.
I wouldn't either.
Why would I?
Right.
Why would I do that? Yeah, it's pointless.
Yeah, there's nothing to be gained by any of that, right? We know the people that are doing these things to viciously go after people. We know the people that will stoop so low to call people's work and tell them, oh, hey, do you know one of your employees is suicidal and he has a gun? Yeah, that's happened in our community, okay?
Mm-hmm.
With people that are still trying to troll me. Same groups. So, we understand that these things can affect people's real lives. I've luckily to be a little insulated. Now you're more predominant in the whole, I don't know, gamer community, which I think it's probably more prevalent, the trolling.
Definitely. I mean, even in the gaming community, you run into trolls, right? And I'm not talking about IBS. I'm just talking about gaming in general. It does happen, where people have some beef and then trolling happens and then it escalates into something, far worse, like personal trolling, and harassment, doxing, and all that stuff. I think it's up to the community to decide whether to platform these people. And for the most part, we've been pretty good at self-policing, right? You don't want to give a platform to people who are known harassers. You don't want to give a platform to people who go out of their way to call people's workplaces to send death threats or rape threats. Especially in the case of women, they love sending rape threats because God, that's like the fastest way to get to a woman, right? Like that's what they do. Like you don't want to offer these people a platform, and at this point, cancel culture as a whole is a negative thing because it means, when I talk about cancel culture, I'm talking about like how Dave Chappelle talks about it. Oh, they're sifting through your Twitter account and they find something that they don't like from, say, 10 years ago, right? And then suddenly you're canceled because you said something problematic. Yeah. That's cancel culture. Yep. But if you are, actively doing something malicious and then you get called out for it, you get caught, basically, right? And people don't want to associate with you because they see that you are an abusive piece of garbage, then that's not cancel culture. That's just consequences to your actions, immediate consequences.
No, I couldn't agree with you more on that. And by the way, we all have things that are out there that go back 10 years. I've been on Facebook 10. I haven't really changed my positions on a lot of things. I know you have substantially. You've done 180. Definitely. Yeah, I mean, so when people will say, "Oh, well, Ian said this 6, 7, 8 years ago," I kind of question if they even know who you are because it's like, well, yeah, I know how he was back then. No offense, you said some stupid shit, but you learned from it, right? And that's what I want people to do is learn. Hey, maybe their positions that you have should be rethought a little bit because I'm not a SJW person, obviously.
Right. And there's stuff from like 19 or 20 years ago, literally 19 to 20 years ago from IRC where I said some really bad jokes. And now they were jokes. I apologized for them once when I was an SJW. I apologized for them. I was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry," because that's the kind of the thing that you do when someone presents you with really old shit and says, "Oh, this is like bad stuff. You need to say sorry for it." Yeah, I apologized for it then, but those are jokes, And then people took that to mean that I had actually meant these things. Because if you look it up, I mean, it's like one of the first few things you'll find on me. If you look my name up on on Google, you'll find some of these old chat logs, and it's like, oh, Nazi jokes. It's like, oh, Ian is a former neo-Nazi. It's like, no, I was never a neo-Nazi. They were just jokes. I was like 16 years old at the time. What do you expect? Kids these days post this stuff.
But don't you think that stuff in the long run has kind of helped you? It's helped me. When trolls come after me, my numbers go up because overall people recognize when people pull these types of stupid shit. It may have worked in the old days, right? But that type of troll narrative doesn't fly any longer because I think people are becoming more educated to those types of tactics.
Yep, and it when you use something like that against me, it's ineffective because people know who I am. I'm a known quantity, and everybody knows I'm not a Nazi. So when you call me a Nazi based on some 20-year-old thing, you're actually hurting cancel culture by doing that because I see old jokes say pulled out on say Kevin Hart. Now, that hurt his career in the short term when people call him a Nazi. He lost the Academy Awards hosting thing. But then, his career didn't die because, a lot of smarter people started to realize that, that was a joke that he made about, breaking a dollhouse over his son's head. It makes you question, why would he buy a dollhouse for his son in the first place? That's the joke, right?
Yeah, right.
And that's the joke, yeah. So people start to question.
Look at what just happened to Sarah Silverman. She was fired from the series she was about to work on because of a 10-year-old blackface joke, which she was making fun of,
And
people who think it's okay.
Blackface.
Right?
And she's woke as fuck.
Oh, yeah, she is. Silverman is woke.
She is way woke.
But do you notice this? And real quick, Kawasa has 10,000 won. He says, how serious do you think this cancel culture will blow up when the internet generation gets into the 40s and 50s, inner politics becomes businessmen, etc.? People change. Look, I've seen it happen from Woodstock era people. And
I was just going to say, it's going to be just like that.
Yeah, it's going to be just like that. When people reach my age, their wokeness changes quite often. And I think they kind of
every generation's going to start a revolution. Every generation's going to start a revolution. Then every generation is confronted with the harsh reality of you've got to go to work, make money, be responsible.
Yeah, but the worst part is, like you said with Silverman, she's woke as fuck, but it still backfired on her. When you're in that woke culture, that counterculture type thing, it backfires and they eat their own.
Yes, they do.
Yes, they do. Yeah, and I think I mentioned Dr. Carrier once too, which was unfortunately the same. He ended up in.
Well, Carrier is a friend of mine, and I respect him. I think he has some kind of respect for me because we have long involved dialogues with each other. I'm probably going to meet up with him on the 7th, I think, of September. Maybe he'll be in my area. Excuse me, but he had a backfire on him. He used to have this narrative: you're either with us or against us. People have accused that of me, and I'm like, no, that's not how I operate. I am not black and white, and I don't think you're either with me or against me. I don't know where that narrative comes from. If you think that, you're severely not listening to what I have to tell you. But he backfired on him because he was like, if you don't believe this person, merely because they say it, you're against us. Well, no, that's not quite how it works with the Me Too thing.
Well, that's also how you rise the ranks in that woke culture, though. Is you have to out-woke other people, and so you have to find the wokest people and show no, they really are racist. Look how much more woke I am. That's how you climb the ladder.
It's even happened to Zoe Quinn, right? She's like Queen Bee in that community, and there's people on her side who have repeatedly tried to cancel her because she's quote unquote transphobic. All it takes is for one transgendered person to say that Zoe Quinn used them for clout, and then everybody else, because they have this whole, hashtag believe women thing, and now it's more like believe people who are, underprivileged, and she being like a cisgendered woman is more privileged than, say, a transgender man, right, or transgender woman, gets canceled immediately because of that, and it's ridiculous, right? So, like right now, she's come of accusations that, and I believe her, by the way, because she's got no reason to lie about this, that somebody in the gaming community who was very well known had raped her, right? Had raped her when she was much younger, like maybe 10 years ago. And from what I'm looking at is that, you've got the people who usually support her, who don't really follow the drama and think of her as a luminary. But then you've also got this huge, contingent of SJWs who are doubtful of what she's saying, and the stuff that they're saying, it kind of echoes, this narrative that she just makes stuff up for clout, right? And maybe that's true to an extent, but they're not even giving her the benefit of the doubt. They're just calling her flat out a liar, right? That's not fair to her. It's not fair to anybody, I think. So it's ridiculous the extent that people will go to try to cancel someone, to try to to cast doubts on anything that they say in order to elevate themselves.
Oh yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that. I have a lot of feminist friends, believe it or not. I'm not a feminist. I don't associate with that title. There's various reasons for that. Doesn't mean I'm not all into egalitarianism, equality, equity. I'm probably 90% on board with most people who identify as feminists, right? Which is shocking to most people. But I do accept about 90% of their narrative. But that other 10% is just mind-boggling. But I had a couple female feminist friends, and I talked to one the other day, and they had actually moved a little bit more right than left because they were seeing what we're talking about now. They've been involved in the feminist movement for a very, very long time, but they're seeing a radicalization of it, and they're also seeing that if you have to believe everybody, then when you do have people that they know are wrongly being talked about, how do you prevent that? And it happened to them too. They're like, wait a minute, I didn't do any of this. What the hell are they talking about? And I'm like, that's what I'm saying, that each their own. So even the moderate liberals, the moderate feminists, the ones that I get along with very well, they're sick of the shit too, right?
They are.
And those are the ones I happen to agree with a lot of times. And like, why don't you just take the label? I'm like, well, the same reason they don't take whatever label. It's like labels tend to identify yourself with a specific thing, and I don't want to be called a feminist because that's not the narrative that I put out. But doesn't mean I don't appreciate feminist issues, right? But I'm not
labels
in intersectionality. Labels
lock you in a box. They prevent you from speaking out against the narrative, and that's the danger of labels. Like I don't, like when I look at my own politics, some people might say I'm an anti-feminist. I'm not an anti-feminist, strangely enough. I believe in equality. I believe in egalitarianism. I believe in that women are, to an extent, they face oppressions that men don't. But I also believe that men face oppressions that women don't, right? So, so I do believe that feminists have a point. But when you start calling yourself a feminist, you have to adopt certain ideas that you don't even necessarily agree with. The idea that women are perpetually oppressed, that men are the oppressors, that there's a patriarchy. These labels are dangerous because they, like I said, they prevent you from speaking out against the narrative. So, when a woman say, and maybe it's a known liar, I don't know, like she makes up a bunch of lies about a bunch of YouTubers. It's happened before, right? Where you see about a bunch of commentary community YouTubers getting quote unquote canceled because someone said a thing about them, right? And it's just a made up story. When you see this happen, and if you call yourself a feminist, you can't question the lies that are being said about these YouTubers because that means you're not believing women. And that's the danger from it, especially when you know the truth. So people need to dissociate themselves from these labels and start thinking for themselves. Just think, okay, so you hold these views, you agree in equality, that's all it has to be. You don't have to call yourself anything.
Yeah.
Well, I think that our natural tribalistic nature as apes, we tend to, once we've adopted a team, develop a real blind spot. And I would say this applies to calling yourself even part of an atheist community or anything, is we develop these blind spots. And I don't think it's anything different than for feminism or being an MRA or being a Democrat or being a Republican. We choose a team and we immediately start developing these sort of internal inconsistencies. And so I do my best to, Nick and I have talked about this often. I do my best to adopt as few labels as possible, only the ones that are genuinely descriptive and not ones that are, I have chosen a team.
Yeah, that's what
I keep hurling labels at him, but he just keeps sitting there going, no.
And it's funny, most philosophers don't like to label themselves for that very reason. William Peters says, I wish an order of preservation would cancel Kyle already. No comment. But just reading this. Yeah. But these labels, like for example, Ian, a while back I kind of identified as anti-feminist, right? But then I moved from that, right? For the same reasons probably you did, because I think it implies certain things that I wasn't going for. I'm not into.
Yep.
Dude, I don't want people to think, oh well, look at Steve's against women, because I think it infers that, and that wasn't my intent.
It does infer that.
Right.
Yeah, that's the danger of a label like that. Yeah.
That's why I don't take that label any longer. It's not because I'm not against feminism, second wave feminism.
I love feminism.
Yeah, so I mean, and I adore my feminist friends. I agree with them. I'm even in
I agree with intersectionality.
Just feminists that I had to talk to. Yeah, well, see, here's the thing with intersectionality. I do and I don't. I agree with the fact that I understand what they're trying to accomplish. I think their methods are questionable, and I think
the methods are questionable, and there's a misunderstanding of what intersectional theory actually is. And this is a problem on both the left and the right. When Ben Shapiro talks about intersectionality, he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. He's responding to the most extreme versions of it. And when you see like social justice warriors, and they call themselves that, so it's fine to call them SJWs, talking about intersectional theory, they don't understand it either. they're saying things like they sound like Kristen Gillibrand, right? She's saying things like she was in Ohio, Youngtown, Ohio, and she said something she was addressing a member of the audience who asked her, "What about us, right? Us poor white people, we feel like Washington D.C. is not listening to us." Her response was deplorable, and I'm glad she's out, right? Her response is deplorable. She said something along the lines of, "Oh, it doesn't matter, if Washington D.C. doesn't care about you, that all your young men are dying of opiate addictions and they're suffering from poverty and they got no jobs. None of that matters because you have white privilege." That is precisely the kind of intersectional theory or the application of it that is absolutely wrong. That goes against what it actually is, because all intersectional theory is actually saying is that, let's say you take two equal people, like two equivalent people, a poor black man and a poor white woman, they both face different discriminations, right? Like a poor white woman might be discriminated against for being a woman, whereas a poor black man gets discriminated against for his race. That's all it's saying in that,
Yeah.
The oppression doesn't just come from one axis; it comes from multiple axes, right?
Yeah, I think a way to describe that would be something along the lines of. By the way, I think the extremists, what they do is they take intersectionality, which is basically rooted in feminist standpoint theory, but
Yep.
they try to make a persecution versus privilege comparison, right? Who has the most
Yes,
amount of
right.
privilege as opposed to who has most amount of persecution, and some of that, like you said, is legit. I'll give you an example. If I'm in an affluent area, if I'm in Bel Air, right? I used to live in Northridge, California, which is not too far from very affluent areas, right? Beverly Hills and Bel Air and all that other stuff. If I, as a white person was walking through those areas as opposed to somebody who's black, it's more likely that other person, that black person, is going to get stopped. That's what they're talking about white privilege. That happens.
Well,
That is what I consider to be something that when people talk about white privilege, that's to me is what they're referring to.
I want to kind of push back on that,
Sure, go
though,
ahead.
for
No,
a
you can't.
couple
You're out of
reasons.
here.
Yeah, that's it.
You can't
That's it.
Cancel.
You're racist.
I love the fact, real quick, that a lot of my mods agree with me on this, and some of my mods don't. But on this channel, my mods are allowed to disagree with me.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Just throwing that out there.
Well, first of all,
They're still
I
wrong
think
half the time,
framing
but
it-
go ahead.
I think framing that as privilege is wrong anyways, because for instance, let me just show you why. If I have a brick and I bash Nick over the head with it, right, but I don't bash you are not privileged to not be bashed over the head. Nick is a victim, right? And so, in the moment that you frame an injustice, right, as a lack of privilege, what you're doing is you're casting, instead of talking about victims and saying, look at the victims of this oppression, look at the victims of this racial injustice, you're saying, look at these people who aren't suffering this injustice. They should feel guilty for not having that
I don't
injustice.
Think so. I look at it as what's called cerebus paribus.
Well,
Basically,
well,
all things being equal, if you have a white person and a black person, and they're both having, like, for example, back in the day when marijuana was highly illegal,
Sure.
if both of them had the same exact situation with the both amount of quantities they would have, the black person is going to get a longer jail time and more likely to be convicted.
Right.
Yep.
I don't think anybody's
but I
going to
don't
argue with
think-
that.
But see, hold on, but that's not a privilege, because, like, okay, because then what you have to do is you have to look at somebody who is completely, it's a poor communication, right? Because in that case, you have to look at somebody who is white and completely impoverished, right?
Okay.
They cannot look around their life and see a single privilege they have in a normative sense in the way we normally talk about privilege. And you have to tell them they have privilege, and they are going to push back.
Okay, I agree with that.
However,
I agree with that.
Yeah.
you're right. If, however, you switch the conversation and you talk about racial injustice, that is something they can understand. If you say, look at this poor person who's in almost the same situation as you, right? Look how similar they are. Look how not different they are. But because of their skin color, they underwent this racial injustice. Injustice is something we respond to. We feel instinctively when we're told that we have privilege, like we're being accused of something. And when you're sitting around dirt poor with nothing in your life and someone tells you you have privilege, you're going to react.
I totally agree with you. No, I
agree.
I get your point 100%. I'm
the- it's the
totally on board
messaging.
with that. But
It's the messaging. It's how you put it
Yeah.
let
forward.
me reframe that a little bit, because I think you're exactly right. But to reframe it in a little bit different way, individual-wise, you're right. We can't take it personally. I can't say, look, in all instances, I have white privilege, right? And I agree with you. But I think we are taking it from an external point of view. We're not doing like an
A
internal
macro.
critique. Yeah, a
macro
We're
privilege.
taking it from an external macrocosm.
yeah,
That
and
on
that-
average, white people have more privilege than black in this country. That's unfortunate.
Sure.
And
Issue.
that's something that
I
needs to
think
change.
the better way to say it is there are more of the people who are privileged in this country, right, are white people.
Yeah.
But this privileged white person up here doesn't necessarily benefit me. This
Correct.
privileged
Right.
white person up here is
Yeah.
just as willing to how should I put it, benefit off of my poverty as he is some
Yeah.
black person's poverty.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to say that the narrative around white privilege ignores how diverse our country really is. Just here in California, and I know you're in California too, you can walk, at least in my area, I can walk 4 blocks and it's almost like a different world. I've lived in 3 distinct areas, and I want to point this out. I think it's really interesting. I've lived in an area where it's been a multicultural dream. Like, there are people of all different colors and all different cultures living right next to each other, and everyone gets along, and they're sharing culture, and it's been beautiful. And that was in East LA, actually. Then I lived in another place, Lancaster, where the most common form of graffiti was a frickin' swastika, and people talked openly about killing. I'm not going to drop the word on your street, but openly about killing black people in family restaurants. No big deal. Then I've lived in areas. In fact, my wife has to commute through areas where being a white person can be a detriment to your very life.
Oh yeah.
My wife. Yeah.
Yeah.
My
So
wife.
It really depends where you're at.
Yeah, my wife was actually assaulted on the freaking bus, and people calling her white bitch and all sorts of expletives. Again, I won't drop on this channel because they're racist. But the bus driver refused to pull over, refused to call the cops.
Yeah, no, I used to live in a very similar situation when I lived in Buena Park. You can go down a couple miles and you were in a place called Hawaiian Gardens. Now, I was recently down there. It has changed. I got to admit, it has changed. It's a lot different than when I remember it 20, 30 years ago. But 30 years ago, if you were me going into White Gardens, you probably would end up dying. I mean, it was not a good area. And so it really is, applicable to where you're at and your situation. So, in the deep South, certain places, as a person that is a black person, they're going to get assaulted by going to certain places as well. So it really, both black, white have their own things that they have to deal with contextually dealing with whatever content where they're at. So I agree with you there.
True.
This is why when I saying on average, we're saying that I do accept that the white privilege does exist, and that's the kind of pushback from feminist and intersectionality people and those types that I agree with, right?
Yeah, I still think of choosing a different word, racial injustice. They would have a better. It would be a better branding for the movement.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
than calling it privilege.
I think the issue is that the people who talk about injustice, or just like privilege, right? More specifically, privilege. The issue with them is that they're using, systemic injustice, systemic privileges, in arguments against individuals. So they see a poor white person and they tell a poor white person to shut the hell up and stay in their lane because they're white and they have privileges, even though that person might be poor and impoverished and have nothing compared to them, right? So the issue is with the individuals misusing intersectional theory to win arguments, to win personal arguments that have no bearing whatsoever to the broader issues, because they don't include context. That's the problem with it. Right. So like from an academic perspective, or from when you're talking about policy and government, it's fine. These things do exist. Injustice does exist. Privileges do exist. But when people bring it up in one-on-one conversations, like when they tell a man to shut up because he's got privileges. Yeah, mansplaining.
Oh God,
that's frustrating.
I get that. You know what? I swear to you, I would literally think that would be a joke if it wasn't real. That people have actually told me, "Oh, Steve,
right?
You're mansplaining." I'm like, "Oh, get out of here!" When somebody says that to me, as we talked about earlier, those are the kind of conversations that I'm just done with. Right?
Yeah.
That's not somebody I'm not going to have a reasonable conversation with.
Yep, they're unreasonable people bringing up things they don't really understand. It's a misapplication of legitimate theories, I would say.
Yeah, it's kind of like Nick-splaining, No, Nick, what's the cost of your suit today? Can you explain to me how much that cost? Oh, he's muted. Are you muted, Nick?
He's muted. Yeah.
Hey, Nick,
muted.
it helps when you unmute. Eventually, we'll get this down to an art form.
One of these days.
There
No,
you
I
go.
highly doubt that. I've been doing
You
that,
got it.
6 months now. I keep doing that. Oh, my God. Well, that's the thing with the boom mic, too, which is when I boom it here, when I'm muted here, I can't always see but at any rate. 500, but I got it at a discount, for 12. Yeah,
For 12
exactly.
bucks.
So
For 12 bucks.
it's good for $12.
Yeah,
It's a nice suit.
I tell you, I've owned a lot of suits. I sold a lot of suits. Even at 80% off, the cheapest I think I've ever got a sports blazer for was $45, and I was happy as hell. So.
Hashtag Steve mansplain puppies.
People used to like when I Steve explained stuff. Usually, all that meant was that somebody would talk about something complicated, and I'd try to filter it down to where like live audience can kind of understand it. I miss doing that. I like doing that. But what else, Ian? For this cancel culture, this call out culture. Let's call it call out culture for a minute.
Call it culture. Yeah, it's a nice
Yeah.
one.
Because on the internet, a lot of people like to punch up. A lot of people like to call out. Now,
Yep.
we all have had call outs.
I hate the idea of punching up.
Oh, I hate it. I don't do it.
All they do is they
hate
punch up to
doing that.
PewDiePie. Right? They're like, well, PewDiePie is the richest, most successful YouTuber, so I'm going to randomly accuse him of being a racist and a Nazi. It's like, are you serious? Like,
But
and then when
not
anyone,
just a PewDiePie, but anybody that
Right.
has a big following.
yeah, right, and then when people are like, when they push back, they're like, yo, this is BS, right?
They're
What are you
ignoring me.
doing?
They're not addressing my complaint.
Yeah, and then they make into an issue. They'll be like, "Oh, look at this!" Like, let's say PewDiePie were to respond to them directly, and I don't think he has because he's smart. But other, smaller but still big creators have responded to accusations. They get called out even worse. They're like, "Well, now you're bullying them because you've got a million more followers than they do." It's like, are you serious? You should have the right to
That's
defend
exactly.
yourself.
And that's what
it's
I do.
It's a Kafka trap.
I
right?
only defend if I think there's a valid criticism to be had. Then I will address it. If it's just somebody punching up to me or just trying to do a call-out culture thing, they get ignored. Absolutely ignored. And if somebody wants to say, well, Steve's ignoring his critics, by all means. You know what? It's not hurting me. It's not hurting my numbers. It's not hurting my friends. It's not hurting my family. It's not hurting my fans. They recognize it. I really love the base that I've cultivated. And it sounds like I'm sucking up to them, but I'm really not. They're smarter than the average fan base. I have a lot of intelligent people. I mean, literally some of the smartest people in the world as part of my fan base. So, they recognize a lot of this stuff. And I've kind of noticed it in your demographic as well, Ian, especially in the Gamergate type stuff, in the gamer communities. People are beginning to become wise with these types of punching ups and these call outs. And I'm gonna call out this person just because they have more subs. And I call out people that have more subs than me all the time. But I actually have actual things that I think they're wrong on. Right? And if they want to address
you're
it,
not
great.
clout chasing. You're not clout chasing.
Not clout chasing at all. If I was, I'd have 1 million subs by now. I'd have at least 100,000. I don't have anywhere near those types of numbers because I'm not going after people merely because they're popular. I go after them because I think they're fundamentally wrong. And if people want to agree with me or disagree, we could talk about that. And they're welcome to or not welcome to. But I don't ever punch up just for the sake of punching up. I hate that.
Yep. And people are wise to it now. People are aware of the tactics that clout chasers use. I mean, the whole concept of clout chasing, we're woke to it now, right? We're woke to it. We know that this is what they're doing.
What's a good? We can't subsume. Or,
If this is what woke is, let's all go back to sleep.
Yeah, let's find a different term. I mean, we could try to what is it when you hijack a term? We could probably try to do that with woke.
We're appropriating the term.
Appropriating the term.
We're taking it back, man.
Taking it back, man.
Yeah, taking it back. It's our new F word.
Well, I don't know if you haven't watched their stuff yet, but In Time is these two gentlemen. They have a new channel, and they're going to be doing a lot of controversial type stuff, and I see them addressing a lot of stuff. And eventually, I think they're going to get really big. I have great expectations for you guys, and so you guys are eventually going to have people calling you out. You guys have you agree on some things, you disagree on other things, which I think is a good match, by the way.
Never apologize. Ever.
I've said, oh my God, have I said that to people? I'm like, look, don't apologize unless you really have done egregious things.
Unless you actually feel bad about it,
right?
Unless
you really feel bad about it. Don't
if you
apologize
insult
to the
someone.
social justice crowd because
or anybody
they will use it against you.
Or
in
anybody. Or anybody. Don't apologize to anybody. Like, I mean, if you did
being
something
yourself,
wrong,
yeah.
Yeah,
Private
if you
opinion.
did something wrong, you wrong someone in your personal life, or maybe you did a bad call out, right? You actually hurt somebody who didn't do anything wrong. Yeah, apologize for that because that's like the bigger thing to do. Like, when John Bain, one of my best friends, I mean, he's passed now, right? I called him out back in the day, when I was part of the anti-Gamergate movement. He was pro-Gamergate. I called him out. I said all these nasty things about him, and I apologized to him profusely, not even like publicly, but personally, privately, and then we became good friends after that. Like, if you actually genuinely feel bad about something or somebody, you did something wrong to them, yeah, apologize for that. That's fine.
Right.
But don't make a spectacle out of it. You're not doing it for clout. I mean, if you're doing it for clout, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. So never do that.
Don't die on your sword. I've given this advice for years.
Yeah.
Some people listen to it. Some people haven't. The ones that haven't listened to it haven't done very well. Don't fall on your sword just because you think somebody is hurt, even though you've done nothing wrong. I understand empathy. Look, people may not believe this, but off air, I'm very empathetic. I really am. I don't like seeing people in trouble. I don't see people hurt, especially people I care about, right? My friends.
Yes.
But if you die on your sword for everybody that comes punching up to you to says, "Oh, well, you offended me by saying this," they're going to now be dominion over you.
They'll eat you.
They'll eat you.
They'll eat you.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're like soul eaters. I mean, they're like those.
Sin Eater. Nick wrote a book like that. He'll
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, indigenous tribesmen. I think the Vikings believe this. Like maybe the Berserkers did, as well as in Southeast Asia. There's I forget the name, the tribe. They're actually in Borneo, where kind of close to where I live. They believe that if you ate the skulls of your enemies, if you ate their hearts, right, their hearts and their skulls, if you did that, you claimed their energy, their power, right? And so this is what SJWs, or even anybody involved in cancel culture, really, not just SJWs. It can be any side of it. It can have any sort of politics. If they are making you feel bad for something and they're canceling you and they're going to assume your power, they're going to take that clout that you have and take it on for themselves. I mean, this is how they grow, because they're just like that. They believe in consuming other people. They're like cannibals.
Yeah, and Nick wrote a book called Confessions of a Sin Eater, which is there any overlap to that?
Only to the it's only to the it's a reference to what I think you had said earlier, which was the person who it's an ancient Celtic rite where you take someone who has committed a number of various crimes, whatever they are, and if you're afraid that they won't go to heaven, you have a sin eater who comes, he eats a meal over this person, and takes those sins into himself so that this person can go to heaven. So it's I think it's a slightly different thing.
I think I saw something like that on Gods. Was it American Gods? Was that the show I watched?
That wouldn't surprise me. I've seen elements of that show.
Yeah, they have
Dark and Gods had it. Yeah.
But what I in particular found fascinating, two things, of course, which is A, who subsumes the sins for the sin eater when he dies, and then B, what is the effect of this? It was a memoir of a prison psychologist, and so of course, what is the psychological impact of dealing with terrible people and in a psychological sense eating their sins and subsuming those crimes in one, because you have to connect with these terrible people, and what does that do to you? But I would like to say one thing. I think that's an interesting perspective, and I think I largely agree with it. But one of the things I think is driving this is I do think, unfortunately, as a species, we do have a genuinely cruel streak, and I think it exists in most of us. And I think we find committing injuries and damages to other people cathartic, and I think that can seem like a controversial statement, but I think there are many psychological reasons why we find it cathartic, which is one reason why the fact of the matter is I love to hate. And people who sit there and look at my Twitter and they're sitting there going, "Well, you're such a nice guy." Well, it doesn't mean I'm unlike anybody else. I find it cathartic. If I belittle someone else, I do strengthen myself, at least in my own estimation. There may be absolutely no reality to it, and usually there isn't. And usually the reality is I am actually diminishing myself in some way. But that doesn't matter, because what happens is I think I am strengthening myself. We perceive who and what we are only in a relative means to other people. There's no absolute measure by which we can judge who we are. The person who is in a hero and just the greatest human being in 300 or 400 years ago, because he educated his slaves, He fed them well. He made sure they were well taken care of. This humanitarian is today a monster. Same exact act. The question is, how do you judge it based on the culture that he's in? And so because we cannot judge who we are except by comparing ourselves to other people, and believe it or not, even those who say I never compare myself to other people, you have to. There, you have no other means by which, and whether it's your parents, whether it's whoever your idols are, you have to. And if you can diminish those around you, all of a sudden you look bigger. So there's this cathartic effect, and that is, I think, what drives it the most. And the bigger the people that you can knock down, the better you feel about yourself, which is why I do tend to be suspicious of righteous indignation in myself, in anyone else. Anytime I start to feel like really good about myself and say, yeah, I'm doing something right, I have to double and triple check myself and say, are you sure? And most of the time I'm actually probably not. But I think if people who don't have that self-awareness, or who just have learned the Pavlovian response of I inflict pain on someone else and I feel better, so long as I'm not really called out on it myself and don't have to be self-reflective, those people are the dangerous ones who truly enjoy, and that's most of trolls. Yeah. And that's, I think, what we're talking about.
That's the sadistic nature of the troll, yeah.
I would like to point out that is one of the reasons we created a legal system with the rules, is because we realize that we are prone to mob justice and vengeful justice.
Oh yeah. Getting people on the bandwagon. Look. I'm sure it's happened to Ian. Let's everybody. Actually, I know it's happened to Ian. I've watched it. Let's everybody jump on the hate Ian bandwagon. Let's get on the hate boner for Ian bandwagon, because if I do this, the people around me are going to see it and go, oh look, Steve is one of us. Steve is one of us. I see it frequently. It's so transparent, and then I have to think to myself, the people that buy into this narrative, what does it really say about them that they don't see it? The lack of comprehension. They're totally sheep. I mean, they're just following along, like you said, Pavlovian responses. Oh, this happened. Oh, my response to this is, let's condemn that guy. Let's cancel culture them. Let's try to shut him down. I've had people try to attack my Patreon recently. My Patreon's at an all-time high because my patrons are not idiots. They see this happening. They literally see, hey, Steve, why are they attacking you for this? I'm like, because they're making shit up, maybe? Because they think it's going to harm me? I'm like, that's
why I'm more popular than ever now. Right? It's why I'm more popular than ever. It's backfired against them. Yeah, it used to.
Right.
Yep. And you notice this, and this goes beyond cancel culture. It speaks to the broader problem of society, of people lacking meaning and purpose in their lives. Right? They've got listless lives. They've got nothing to do. They don't feel like they accomplished anything, or that they can't accomplish anything. So they attach themselves to movements. Now, in a smaller capacity, they'll attach themselves to a bandwagon, a hate bandwagon against a celebrity or a famous person who's being canceled. In a larger, more dangerous, I think, degree, they attach themselves to movements like, for instance, the climate cult. Now, I don't know where you stand on climate change, and I do think that we should plant more trees and, cut down pollution and stuff. But you've got these people who make it their whole life, about the climate cult, right? They make it about, supporting Greta Thunberg, right? And anyone who criticizes her is a monster. The oil magnates are monsters. If you drive a car, you're a monster. If you eat meat, you're a monster.
They go to an extreme, right?
Yeah, they go to extremes, and this is what gives them purpose, right? So they've gone beyond just canceling people, one or two people. They go large, right? They feel like they're part of this crusade to save the planet. And I mean, what's bigger than that? Honestly, right? Saving the planet's a big deal.
But that was like the whole hippie movement, let's end the war by giving out flowers.
Yeah,
it was just they thought they were trying to do something, and I'm not faulting anybody for any of that. I'm just saying it doesn't really have as much impact as they think.
At least they were trying to change the world with flowers, not bashing people in the head with bike locks.
Yeah, Antifa.
Yeah, that's the difference. I prefer. I'll take those hippies.
Cool. Antifa has gotten to be, and those types of people that are using violence to try to silence people. They have gone to so far to extreme where they've become the enemy. They become
Well,
what
I want
hate.
to point out that these guys think that they're the way they envision themselves, the Antifa is like the protesters in Hong Kong. But the difference is the protesters in Hong Kong are literally taking it to the power establishment.
Mhm.
They are taking down facial recognition cameras. They are fighting back against, the system, so to speak. Antifa is attacking citizens.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Exactly, and by the way, the Hong Kong
Big
people,
difference.
they literally can be deported to mainland China and never be heard from again. They're taking a hell
Right.
of
That's
a risk.
happening.
S
That's
Wing
what's
at
happening.
$5 real quick.
Yeah.
He says, "Here's a $5 so Steve can get more Admiral Nelson." Also, a shameless plug to tell everybody to support Sean Hufford. Yes, by the way, I think Sean Hufford's GoFundMe thing is still going on. Cheshire is in the live chat. I think she could put the link in for that by all means. One thing I want this channel to be, and the Great Debate Community channel, is to support all causes that we, think is appropriate. We can't literally do everything, right? But certain things like certain GoFundMes and certain things for people, we are going to take precedence on, and we are going to support them
Speaking
wholeheartedly.
of which, thank you. What was it, a couple months ago? You shouted out my wife had her heart condition. You shouted out our GoFundMe for medical bills. That was a huge help. Thank you.
Oh, no problem. And like I said, we have to, as a community, come together, and these are the things that I think are very supportive. This is why when I hear the narrative like, well, Steve's grifting off his Patreons or this and that, I'm like, I've been on YouTube for 7 years. I claimed $4,000 last year. What the hell am I grifting? I have been on the poverty level for 6 freaking years by my own choice. Don't get me wrong, because I quit my job and moved to be with my daughter. I'm not saying this wasn't because of me.
No, you're not. Yeah, but
But I mean, for God freaking sake, people! I'm like, I don't. It's just bizarre as shit to me. Because
I would like to point out
I got
one
super
thing.
chat real quick. We're more super
Yeah.
chat than it's all yours, Nick. Grogster, $7 Australian. Invite Dr. Edward Dutton, YouTuber, to talk about SJW as a race. He isn't politically correct, but he's not a hater either. He's an absolute riot. I'll look into that. Thank you, Grogster. Okay, go ahead.
No, you know what? I'm perfectly happy to criticize Steve or anyone else where it's necessary, but I like to try to break down arguments. I try to look at it a little bit from the other side, and I have yet to find too many people who sit there and think that Steve is stupid, and I have yet to find too many people. I mean, just genuinely, just stupid. I've never seen a good defense to that argument, nor have I seen anyone who thinks that Steve can't run a show and couldn't be staggeringly successful if he chose. The only conclusion I can reach is that Steve is where he is by choice, and if you look at how much he
I like
enjoys
where I'm
doing
at.
the stuff that he's, yeah,
I'm at the level that I'm supposed to be. I'm at my comfort level.
yeah, and I if somebody thinks that that's not the case, then great, make the argument for that. I've never seen it well made, and so then anyone who says, well, Steve is grifting off of anybody, I'm sitting there going, why is he doing that when he could probably be far more successful if he? I don't. There's
For
something
example,
missing
some
there.
People had asked me to do an Amazon wish list. I had like 7 or 8 items on it, all within under $20, and stuff I could use. Like for example, these were sent to me. These are little chair pads that Nikki Davis sent to me because I have the plastic I'm using that it was uncomfortable, and I actually cut myself one time. So I was like, I need some. You want to give me something? Give me some chair pads because I'm not going to go around and buy these for myself. It's just something that I just won't do.
I'm
She
going to
got
bet
these for
tape
me,
was
and
on
I
that.
still use them. Okay, I
Tape.
literally have it right here. So thank you, Nikki.
I'll bet you had tape on that list too for your headphones. Like,
No,
no, I
I got
don't need
plenty.
headphones.
No, I
I
have
need
plenty
tape to fix the headphones.
No, I got plenty of tape here, but
That's his computer repair
but
kit. It's just a roll of duct tape.
Somebody has sent me a summer sausage, and the note on it was in your hour of need, and I'm like, first of all, I'm not in any hour of need. I'm not in any bad shape where I'm going hungry. Okay, I don't have a heart condition. I don't play to any of that bullshit, right? That's just ridiculous. But it was good. It was. I mean, I ate it, right? But I was like, I didn't quite understand where it was coming from, but I appreciate it. But I'm not in any hour of need. I'm not hurting for funds right now because of the last 2 months. Because people have been very supportive. I'm not in any bad position. So I don't want that narrative to ever get that out there because there's a hell of a lot of people that are much worse off than I am right now, like Sean Hufford. He needs it. And so, I mean, if people think that's grifting to try to support your friends, then they have a weird understanding of it. I definitely don't get that at all.
Grifting is a term that people like to throw around these days, also as a means to cancel other people.
Yeah, because they're going out.
Well-
Because they're like, oh, do you know, Steve's trying to promote his Patreon. Well, yeah, I throw it out there like once every 5 shows or something like that, like anybody else would.
Yep.
I've had
How
it for
dare
many
you make
years.
money? How dare you have a
I
job?
had 22
You're a
Patreons
grifter.
for like since I started Patreon 3 or 4 years ago, whatever it was. I had like 22, 30 at the most, I think, one time. And it was because of my channel. It wasn't because of the Great Debate Community or G+. That was not something that you could monetize. That was just the Great Debate community. And then I formed a channel out of it, which, by the way, doesn't make much money. Nick is the manager of it. He can go look. It's not exactly the most lucrative channel now, is it?
No, well, no. I tried to look for the income, and I couldn't believe the numbers I was saying. They're going, no, that's I know vegetables that have a higher IQ.
You be honest, that channel does not make much money.
Remember. I think it was $6 to $20 one month is what I recall seeing on the back end. I wasn't looking for the month. I saw
that channel. That was pretty good, actually. It was nominal.
I think 20 was the highest. I saw. So I remember seeing 6.
Steve's making all this money. I had somebody the other day say, "Well, Steve's riding the gravy train." I'm like,
yeah, don't spend it all in one place, okay?
Oh, okay. So I can afford to have a good meal every now and then because I do like to eat. That's the gravy. That's your idea of a gravy train? I'm like, come on.
You want to look at a grift? Look at BreadTube. Look at BreadTube. There's a grift, right? They're just saying stuff that they know socialists want to hear. So let's give them some Patreon money. Here's $100,000 a month.
Wow.
These are the guys accusing everybody of being a grifter, right?
Yeah. No, that's not really grifting though, because I think it waters down grifting. That's pandering.
Pandering.
Yeah.
Yeah, pandering. I would say it's more pandering. Which, by the way,
but they love using the term grift.
You mentioned this, Ansgar, before. You said something along the lines of, at worst, Steve, if you were being utterly charitable to the other side, Steve is pandering to an audience, which I don't think you actually believe.
No, I don't.
Okay,
no, but that's the very worst.
At the very worst, if that was the only thing that was true, that's not even relatively near grifting, which I was accused of.
The term is thrown around willy-nilly, right? How dare you have an opinion? You're a grifter.
Yeah. And again, here's what I find interesting about it, which is you get to like 1984 and controlling people's thoughts by controlling the language, and it's a lot. It's not nearly as nuanced as 1984, but when you use the word grifting and when you say we've ingrained this into our culture, for liberals, it's calling conservatives racist because they object to the liberal policies of a black president. For conservatives, it's calling liberals unpatriotic for opposing what they consider to be the only the only policies that can be supported. And by using that language, you're trying to shut down the discussion, and you're trying to keep the other person from voicing their views. And it's not, I think, as serious as cancel culture in this larger sense, but I think it's the same thing, which is you're trying to use that language to shut down somebody else's ideas. Now, I think Ansgar had a much better definition of cancel culture, which would preclude it in the sense that I'm using it, because I am using it on sort of an individual, just one-on-one conversationalist style. But I think it's the same thing, and I think it also does speak once again to the sometimes joy we can take in demeaning other people. You know why people in the South, and I know people are going to take this out of context, and now I'm the next one is about to get in trouble here. But you know why people in the South are voting against Barack Obama? It's not because they voted against every liberal for the last 20, 30, 40 years. It's because they're racist, and you know it, and I know it. And let's all pat each other on the back for not being as racist as those Southerners.
Well, yeah, that's the idea that every single person who voted for Trump because they're a white racist person who's trying to take their country back. It's just ridiculous.
I can't look. We all know I'm not a Trump fan. Ian, I don't think you are either. Correct?
Not even remotely.
I read your stuff, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't like that narrative that the people that voted for Trump have to be somehow, these white supremacist kind of things. No, I think a lot of them voted because they just were not Hillary fans, and I think a lot of it was pushback because of this woke culture. I think
a lot of it is just an extreme reaction to the rise, or I should say the almost rising from the ashes of political correctness.
Yeah, exactly. PC, right?
Yep.
Ian, what do you? I know you've kind of dealt with this yourself, but do you think that a lot of it has to do with backlash from PC? Because I even have my Twitter line, not PC. I tell people not PC, and then when I say something like, "Oh my God, look what Steve said," I'm like, "Yeah, it's a joke. Get the frick over it, people."
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not politically correct. I'll make jokes, laugh, don't joke, or don't laugh, whatever. But I mean, to take anything I say seriously when you can tell that I did it as a joke, I put a winky face or whatever.
They're being willfully obtuse. They just want to cancel you by being obtuse, and that's the most disingenuous thing you can do to a person. Like when use a very, like a term that is common. It's commonplace, and everybody knows what you're talking about, and they expect you to define it. That's when you're dealing with a disingenuous person who's just looking to find, to start trouble
I see that
with
all the
you,
time
right?
with Nick. Nick, this isn't always the case. I'm not going to throw this out there. We're going to be doing a show on this probably next week on Ask a Philosopher. But like ichtheists and theological cognitivists, I see a lot of times they're saying, "Well, can you define God?" If an honest person asked me that question, I might have a dialogue with them. But most of the time, when I get asked that question, in my mind at least, I am not dealing with an honest agent. At least I think there's a propensity that I'm not dealing with an honest agent because in 2,000 years of moral discussions, theological discussions, that question is just silly to me. Especially when people spend all their time on the computer talking about how bad theism is and they're anti-theists and they hate.
Yes.
And all of a sudden they say, well, what do you mean by God? Oh, come on.
They know what it means.
That happened 2 minutes before we walked into this room.
I saw.
2 minutes before we walked into this room, and somebody with
up.
whom I agreed, and I was just sitting there going, "I'm trying to help you," and they're like, "Oh my!" And I was just like, "You have no idea."
Well, a lot of these arguments, to be quite honest, in the atheosphere, are just thrown out, and responses, I should say, are just thrown out by rote. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly. They're
idioms
just
that people throw out there
regurgitating.
like this and they parrot them, and I've called that out for a long time. Now that isn't what a culture is, by the way. I mean, when you call somebody out when you have a legitimate gripe, people know that I'm not making this shit up when I talk about agnosticism and atheism. I honestly believe this.
You're also not calling up their employer and saying this person made a bad argument on the internet. You should fire them.
Yeah, I've never said we should shut down people on the internet just because I think that they're wrong. No.
Yeah.
There's this habit of, when you call somebody out and they have a bad opinion, say Ilhan Omar has done some bad things, has said some bad things, and their response immediately is to assume that you're either racist or that you're attacking them because of their identity, right? There's this response nowadays to assume that, and it's so disingenuous, it's disgusting. It shuts down any sort of conversation, and it's like a fallback position when you have nothing else to defend yourself with.
As soon as somebody says to me, well, you wouldn't say this to me if I wasn't a woman or I wasn't black or wasn't trans or anything like this. Conversation's done at that point. With me most of the time.
It's the weaponization of identity. I have this identity that I feel I can use as a cudgel to win any argument, and I'm going to.
Yeah. And
Well,
I hate those types of discussions too, because it's like, wait a minute, I have a really articulate argument that I'm arguing with you, and all of a sudden your rejoinder is, well, Steve's, talking to me this way because I'm a woman or something like that. People that know,
Well, it's an ad hominem fallacy.
Yeah, it's totally ad hominem. That is what that is ad hominem.
That's the definition of
You're counting my argument because of something personal about something.
Yep. Which there's something personal that's not applicable. I mean, you can have but and because it is necessarily a premise in the dismissal, it's the fallacy.
There's another thing that's repeated at rote, particularly in the atheosphere, is logical fallacies thrown out, like especially ad hominem, thrown out.
They get them wrong so often.
Yes, so often.
They shut you down. Right?
Yeah.
You insult someone. Let's say you're having an argument with somebody, and they said something really, really dumb, and you addressed that argument, but you also called them a fucking idiot at the same time.
They're like, "Oh my God, you committed a fallacy." You're like, "No, I did."
Yeah, that's not the fallacy at all. Yeah, it's like that's just an insult.
What I will do sometimes is I will say that was ad hominem, which it was. It just wasn't the fallacy, and I will bring that up on occasion if, by being ad hominem, I would
give you pushback on that, but that's just me.
But I will differentiate. What I'll say is, look, I'm not saying it's the fallacy, but what you are doing is it still is somehow misdirecting from the actual argument. It's not a fallacy because you're not suggesting that the argument is more or less valid as a result of the ad hominem engagement, but it is still an ad hominem engagement, which I do find, and just in terms of,
I can accept your terminology that way, ad hominem engagement. I like that, because there are uses of the phrase ad hominem that's outside of a fallacy. There is a use for that, but it's very rare. It would be hard pressed for me to really come up with an example, but it's not used pejoratively. It's not used fallaciously, but there is a Latin phrase that Latin phrase used in other instances. But
that goes to what he was saying, Ian was saying earlier about if somebody just comes right off the bat calling him names that he knows aren't true, even if they're not part of the argument, he says, listen, if you are engaging ad hominem right out of the gate, I am going to question your motives. Doesn't mean your argument's right, doesn't mean it's wrong. I am not suggesting there's a fallacy. I am suggesting you're not an honest interlocutor because of...
Okay, I see your differentiation. You're differentiating between engaging ad hom as opposed to committing ad hom.
Yes.
Well, and the thing is that's very contextual.
Fair enough.
Because
I can grant you that.
Because I've seen, for instance, Hitchens definitely insult someone while also tearing apart their argument in a very serious way, and he wasn't distracting from the argument at all.
Well, and I had just recently had somebody give me 3 fallacies they got wrong right after another, right? Because like Ian, like we were saying, when somebody throws out these fallacies, like, "Oh, Steve, you're straw manning me." No, I actually getting your argument exactly right. Your argument's just bad. That's not a straw man. If I call you a dimwit, that's not ad hominem fallacy. And if I say, hey, look, I appeal to like citations. I say, look, I have 20 PhDs that have said this as support to my argument. That's not an ad populum fallacy, and it's not argumenting to an authority ad fallacy either. It's called a legit appeal to authority. People in the atheist communities have long standings with throwing out bad fallacies, and I've been on it. Mortimer,
they love it.
It's easy. On it. A whole bunch of other people have been on this saying, hey, stop doing this, but they don't.
Hell, Rationality Rules has a whole video series educating people
but
on
they don't
it.
listen.
No, they don't.
No, they still do it because it's easy, right? It's an easy thing to do. It's like when you argue with a doctor and he's got a medical degree and you've just got your opinions, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the doctor's like, he does a fallback. It's like, well, I'm a doctor. I've studied this stuff for ages.
That's just a fallacy.
Advercunium. It's like, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Come on now.
Fallacy.
And they sound exactly like those. Like I put out a video today. It's like 4 years old, but it's about some South African college where they were teaching. Like there was a class. It was like a safe space. You're not supposed to question the people at the panel. They were talking about how science needs to be decolonialized, right? Or decolonized.
Oh my God.
Because it's like they have their truth, right?
That's all standpoint theory, right?
That is
there.
standpoint theory. Oh yeah.
Right.
The first time I exposed to that, I thought there was a joke.
Me too. I thought it was like a flat Earth. It was a flat Earth or creationist argument, is what I was thinking.
I so want to get
laughed at it.
King Crockduck on in time to talk about this because his
series. You had mentioned.
You want that?
Yeah.
I can talk to him for you on your behest.
That would be great because his series on the science wars is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah,
absolutely fantastic.
I still keep tabs on him. He disappeared off Twitter, but I got connections to him.
Oh, that would be wonderful.
Someone's asking what standpoint theory is. Can you explain it, Steve?
There's various types of standpoint theory. One of the ones we're talking about is called feminist standpoint theory, which is the position that how are you going to address a particular social interactions from the position of feminism, as far as promoting these ideas. There's a patriarchal system that has been keeping men in power. It's the position of social politics from the position of feminism is basically standpoint theory.
Right, and it asserts that because science was created by white men, that it is structurally built to benefit the white male.
Women out of sciences, out of STEM theory, STEM classes.
Yeah, exactly.
The white colonialization in Africa. The narrative that they say is if they had not been colonialized by British white people, that they would have developed science on their own, and maybe in a completely different way, incorporating their own sense of spirituality and things of that nature.
It's hilarious.
And let's not forget lived experience is just as important as hard.
Oh my God!
But that's not science. What they're promoting. Science is a very specific thing.
No. Well, only to white. White male culture, it's a very specific
I actually
thing.
Find this really insulting. Are you telling me that that only white men can be objective?
Yeah, I get
that's what they're saying.
It's demeaning to those other cultures, isn't it?
It absolutely is. It's kind of I won't call it like the soft bigotry of low expectations because it's not, but it's like saying that like reality itself is subjective. This is postmodernism, right? This is literally a form of postmodernism.
Yeah. Well, and for 200 years, no, maybe 300, the greatest science being done by the by humankind was coming out of the Arab community, and they just, I mean, completely revolutionized everything. Now, I forget who was the imam who made mathematics illegal, but once he turned mathematics illegal, all of a sudden all that went, just gone, and a lot of that knowledge was lost. Now, here's the really interesting thing: when white Europeans sort of took up the mantle of science. They discovered the same things.
Is that thing with science? Is that good that you can have two various?
That's just I don't know how it happened.
Yeah, you can have two.
It's interesting.
Says you, Steve, but I still don't know how it happened.
If you have the Chinese developing gunpowder, and you have some other culture developing gunpowder, guess what? They're going to come to the same conclusions.
It's almost like no matter what color my skin is, no matter what genitals I have, I'm going to see the same thing when I look through the microscope.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, Jesus, now you're just talking. Oh, my God, Ansgar. This is why I don't like working with you, is you just make shit up, and everybody knows it, and they're laughing at you, not at me. They're laughing at you, and
at the hat.
Know it.
Now, here's the thing, though.
They're laughing at you. This one's not the hat.
This video is probably going to get some views, because I think that these discussions, people like to watch. I tell you right now, these are my favorite types of discussions, and I want these types of videos to be my more popular videos. When people say, well, I make these other videos for drama stuff, I cannot stand. I would rather have these types of videos be the ones that actually get talked about. And I also like my science videos, don't get me wrong. I'd love like the one we did with Landon Curtin. I hope that gets popular, because I want to promote science on this channel. We're going to be moving a lot of other stuff to the other channel, the Great Debate Community channel. But I guarantee you that there's going to be controversy just about this video by some people out there. Going to be offended by what we've said in here. Mm-hmm. It's going to happen.
Of course. Yeah.
So,
because we're seeing that there is an objective truth and an objective reality. Well, this offends some people. They don't like that.
I used the word righteous indignation earlier, and I actually used that for a very deliberate reason. That word was coined, and it's been used before, but it was actually coined by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And he had a very specific thing that he meant when he meant righteous indignation. And part of it had nothing, and the core of that principle as he used it was not to belittle the other people, not to shut them down, white, black, it didn't matter to him. When he used righteous indignation, and he wrote about this, well, not extensively, but he wrote about it, and he talks about it in a letter from a Birmingham jail. And what I find interesting is the people who now use righteous indignation are the ones who most violate what he talked about when he said truly dealing with people who have committed some kind of moral outrage. And the goal wasn't to elevate yourself in the correction. The goal wasn't to demean them. It was to make a genuine change in the culture and make the world a better place. And who got credit for it was completely irrelevant. And who was helped by it outside of the person that you're actually trying to correct was irrelevant. It was about connecting with that person and changing it. Is there anything in any of the cancel culture we've discussed that reflects any of those values? No.
I want to address a comment here. Nadia Yvette Chambers says, actually reading these... Yeah,
I've known Nadia longer than anybody probably
cool.
in my audience.
They explicitly limit criticisms to fields relating to human concerns, like limited swaths of biology and more broadly social sciences. That isn't quite true. We're talking about people who, for instance, equated, what's his name? Why am I forgetting the famous scientist who came up with classical mechanics, who wrote the book on it? Newton.
Sir Isaac Newton.
Yes,
Isaac Newton.
His book by a feminist standpoint theorists was called A Rate Manual of the Natural World.
Oh, Jesus.
Seriously.
Okay.
Wow.
I really wish
Let's not
I thought
forget
this
that
was a
these
joke.
people
I
want
really
It
wish.
sounds like a joke. I wasn't kidding when I said I love this, so I thought it was satire. It's not.
That's hilarious.
The problem is while you're right, it does limit itself to those things. It also asserts that science in itself is a social construct, that the rules of science that we have come up with, we have only done so to benefit the white male power.
Yeah, exactly.
Structure.
It's that's the narrative that they put out, right?
They
And
want
this is the
black
danger of it.
magic taught as science, for fuck's sake.
This is the danger of their of their quote unquote social sciences. I'm not condemning like actual social science, but this postmodern version of it is a danger to real science, right? Hard sciences, because they're telling you that like let's say you're building a bridge and you're a woman, you're a feminist or something, right? You're like a hardcore feminist, and you want to build a bridge in a certain way. You don't want to follow the manual because the manual's written by a man, right? So you build it a certain way. Guess what? It's going to collapse, right? The car that you built is going to explode, right? And when they say, like this is a danger, is when they get into like biology, for example. They're saying that gender or sexuality is a social construct. So now they're trying to socially engineer new genders into existence. That's a danger. That's a threat to the natural order of things, the natural world, because nature fights back, and this is why you see a spike in suicides. This is why when I talk about feminists building bridges, that actually happened. How did they become architects? Well, they weren't certified properly, right? The reason they got their degrees and stuff was because of the soft bigotry of low expectations. They're women, so therefore we're going to pass them. And this is something we see all across every single sector, I think, of the industry, of whether it's science or even the military. I mean, like there's this new book by James Hassan, and it's about how the political correctness is actually destroying the cohesion of U.S. Ranger units because they're letting women who are unqualified to lead platoons to become leaders of platoons in the U.S. Rangers, and they're gonna get people killed.
No, I think
they're gonna get people killed.
But here's the thing: that's what the colleges are putting out nowadays. When you have these people graduating from these very, very left, liberal colleges, they're not getting the education on the stuff that they need to know, right? As much as how important it is to have. Again, let's design that bridge so it looks the way I want it, rather than being functionally sound or not.
Yeah. Well, they're actually. I just shared an article with Nick about this a while ago. But University of Technology Sydney has just allowed. Will allow female school leavers to enter its engineering courses with a lower ATAR than males, under a plan to boost the numbers of women in the field.
Yeah. See, I hate that kind of thing. And people say, well, you don't want women to succeed. No, I know for.
I want them to be qualified.
Women are damn smart in these fields just as much as men. There's an equality there. If not, sometimes they probably even have advantages in certain fields.
Yeah, if you are as smart as a man.
Yeah.
Right? If you're as smart as a man, if you're willing to put as much hard work into it as a man, you get the same thing. I mean, there is nothing preventing any woman from joining that course and excelling at it. I mean, like, I know women in engineering, and they're insulted by this because
they should be insulted by it.
Yeah, they are tremendously. They're the ones fighting back against it louder than men are.
Put the work in for that?
Yeah,
come on.
Seriously, like
I am willing, however, to address that there are cultural biases where we don't necessarily push our young girls into those kinds of aspirations. Sure. And that is worth addressing. But you don't address it by lowering the standards for women who do want to enter those fields.
Right. Yeah, I mean, do you want somebody who got in on some kind of special thing saying, you know what, we had 5 candidates.
It says
all men that were, and we had one woman apply, but we're going to have to give her a billet, even though she scored way low. Do you want her building rockets?
Hell no.
But here's the thing.
It says that women are disabled.
It's the same thing if I had 5 women and 1 man that wasn't qualified. I'd want those 5 women building the rockets, so you have to apply it equally. This is why when people say, well, we have to have billets for certain types of protected classes, I'm not really a fan of that for that very reason, because if it was reversed, this is how I look at things. All you do is flip things. I like to walk in other people's shoes. If you had 5 women and you had Nick, and Nick's not really that much of a rocket scientist, but he barely
never hired Nick for anything.
But he gets the slot.
Yeah, that's right.
By the way, I'm picking that up because I'm doing Kerbal. God, that game's hard.
And this is probably Google.
It's not even a game. It's like
here's
hard.
And what does it do here? Like, let's say you're wanting to hire someone for a project, right? And you have 3 women and 2 men up, right? When you can make the assumption that at least 2 of them may have gotten in because of lowered standards and got their degree because of lowered standards, I think that would make me want to go, maybe I should hire the man. He was held to higher standards.
It hurts.
Well,
it could backfire, right?
Yeah.
Here's the other thing that I think is really important about what Ansgar said in his previous set of statements, which is I have no doubt in my life. I no doubt in my mind that everybody on this panel 100% agrees with the basic intent of those, which is to overcome what Ansgar was talking about. So everybody here agrees.
Absolutely.
Everybody here agrees. Everybody here would fight for that. But because you disagree with how it's being done, the assumption is you must disagree with the intent behind it. And if you try to say, no, I do not, well, of course you're lying, because you're the person who disagrees with what we're
I would
doing.
frame it this way. We all recognize the same problems. We all maybe differ about how to resolve those issues. That doesn't mean that you're apologizing for those issues. It means that we have different ways we think might fix the problem, because we all have our own opinions. We all have our own understanding. We all have things that we bring to the table. I might have a different approach because of my past. You might have a different approach from your past. It doesn't mean one's right, one's wrong. You fight.
A healthy democracy requires that.
The idea that the best will hopefully
it's a diversity of opinions, of opinions, of ideology.
If I come up with an idea to solve a problem, I might have a blind spot because I haven't experienced something. And Steve might bring up an idea and say, well, but that's not addressing this. And pretty soon, through compromise, you have an idea that works for the most amount of people. Yes. That's the idea anyway.
Yeah, that's a utilitarian type approach. By the way, Kawasa, thank you. Kawasa says, tell us when you get to Mum and Kerbal, Steve. You know what? I'm probably gonna start from scratch because the first time I'm trying to do contracts and not easy. So I think I think what I learned, I'm gonna start over again. But I will be streaming Kerbal sometime in the future. People have asked me to. It's not an easy game. Not gonna front.
It's a hard game. I mean, James Damore was canceled because he proposed that, he was talking about how Google has substantially lowered its standards for hiring people in order to, and this is stuff that's been, leaked out by Project Veritas, so it's very much confirmed, right? That Google has changed the way it hires people. It tries to hire minorities, right? And they the way that they do it is they change the requirements. They make it in such a way that that you have to be a minority in order to get the job. It doesn't mean you're qualified for it. It just means that you fit the criteria that they want to see. And this is why Google's going to go down the drain. Yep, that's a hiring thing. Right. And so, I understand the motive, right? I understand that they want to diversify the company. It's nice. It's a nice thing to do. And now James Damore, he agreed with diversity, right? He's always been for diversity, but he disagreed with the methods. And he said that there's a reason. First of all, we have to analyze why aren't there enough female engineers? Why is this? So he looked at the background. He was like, well, the majority of women just don't like these fields. Right? And it may be a social thing. It may be a biological thing. And here's why. And he was talking about the averages and so on. And so he was just going over that's actual statistics.
I think that's actually generally speaking, I know people don't like normative things when it comes to gender stuff, but there is social normative things. That's you can't just walk away from those things.
Yeah,
you
can't walk away from it.
Tend to like certain things more. I mean, for example, look at NASCAR. Would you actually say that on average, probably more men tend to favor her than women? That doesn't mean there's not rabid, fanatical female NASCAR fans, but on average,
whether or not we like it, we are sexually dimorphic, and so. And that on average, expands into our behavior. And male behavior on average is going to be different than female behavior. And male drives is going to be, again, on average, different than female drives. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Women who love NASCAR, who love wrestling, who love video games, for example, and when I say video games, I don't mean those phone games. I mean like Call of Duty, right, and Overwatch. Those women are outliers, right? Outliers always exist, and they do not define the norm, right? And so when these women exist, the smart ones will tell you that, they notice that most women don't play video games, these types of video games, or watch NASCAR. And it's not because of, some social bias that or men are preventing them from enjoying it. It's simply because they're outliers and they're happy to be that way. And, this is the reality that we have to accept. If let's say we want more women to work in technology, then we have to analyze why this is, identify it, and then figure out, hey, how can we get more women involved? We want their perspectives. So maybe they're not cut out to be engineers. Maybe they don't even want to be engineers, right? But we want them to be a part of the process because I think it is necessary. Personally, I think it's necessary for women to be involved in, say, user experience, right? That's a very underappreciated field. Yeah. I mean, when you have a bunch of men,
really good point.
Yeah, that's
right.
I totally agree.
Excellent point.
I want I want to also address what Prince Duchelle says. I haven't met a single woman who doesn't play video games. Let me tell you, growing up when video games were still nerd culture, and you actually took a social ding for being a gamer, right?
Oh yeah.
Very few girls, very few women wanted anything to do with video games. That was immature. That was boy stuff. They made fun of you, and you didn't get dates.
Yeah.
Now that gamer is no longer a social detriment, things have changed drastically. And now that you don't have to take a social repercussion for being willing to be into a niche genre or I should say a niche hobby. Yes, a lot more women are getting into video
and they're
games.
just as competitive. Women will whip your ass.
Women are very competitive. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, I looked at my demographics. Do you guys want to guess? And this is by watch time. But by the way, weird. There's only male and female for demographics, but whatever. But what percentage do you think of my demographic is generally male?
80.
I'd say
70?
95%.
Higher?
I'd say 95%.
That's
Yeah.
actually Nick's favorite number. Nick, how much of the show that you do on your
95.
95%? So I mean, I don't obviously cater to a male audience, right? I don't give a
Right.
shit whether somebody's male, female, not both, whatever. Which we actually had somebody identify as both
That
genders.
does seem high though.
And I'm like,
but yeah.
and I'm like, you can identify as neither, but on a bimodal distribution where you have male and female, then you have some. Cannot have both opposite poles.
And just
Whatever.
just because we're in that general vicinity, I decided while we were talking, I was trying to find the chat and I was in on the wrong thing, and and all of a sudden I relogged in as my mod account on the GDC. I stand corrected. So when I had said I could have sworn at one point I saw as high as 20. The GDC's most successful month that I can see is this month. Star-spangled success, probably because of a new show that they have featured called In Time, premiering on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays but at any rate, as a result of all this spectacular success, Steve has earned for the month of August $7.95.
Hey, gravy train, people! Gravy train.
So I would very much like to learn how to take advantage of my fans, but I'm not going to learn it from Steve.
Real quick, when did that channel come into existence? It's been a while.
That channel, I think it's at
17, 16?
No, it's at least 2 years, probably a bit more, but it's at least 2 years.
You have all the numbers in front of you. When people are saying,
I don't have them now. I'll look right now. Yeah.
Whatever. When people are accusing me, oh look, Steve is making all this money off the GDC, they're full of shit.
Well, this is the problem. This is the problem. I've seen trolls in roughly the same breath and from the same trolls say, if Steve is so smart, why hasn't the GDC taken off and why isn't he rich from it? And then on the other side say, Steve is making loads of money off of other people's backs on the GDC, and he's getting rich off of other people's content.
How much money did, like I said, that channel's been around for several years. If I'm getting rich off their content, I must be doing it wrong because I'm telling people, and he can verify it, that amount, they didn't make that much money. I was making like $10 a month. I'm sorry. If you think that's gravy train, what the hell's wrong with you? I mean, it's just blows my mind that people are that stupid to buy into that narrative. When you can back it, you have the records. These are objective facts.
Yeah, no.
Honestly,
I have just looked. This is what I am saying.
Go ahead. I'll let you. How much money? How much money total has that channel made in 3 years?
I will start to look it up. But while I do that,
but
I use my real name on Twitter. I use my real name on Facebook. I am a published author. I have a reputation. We're starting a show on which our reputation is important. And I'm telling you, I looked without Steve knowing. He had authorized it, but I looked and I've had access to this for quite some time, and that's what the number reads right now. And I'll go check out what he asked me to. But I'm just saying that's a fact. I'm not saying I agree or disagree with anything else Steve says or does. That's the fact as it stands today.
Considering what you actually do with the channel, if you were making $300 a month, I would say that. Well, yeah, but I mean, but seriously, if you were making a whole lot of money per month, I would still say that what you do is anything but grifting. It's anything but scamming. It's anything but making money off of people, because the channel exists to promote other people. And if you get a little money for that. So
but
fucking
here's what
what?
I don't get. I am trying to survive off the internet. I admit that, right? This is what I do. I'm full-time YouTube.
So how is it a grift?
Yeah,
Like, you admit it.
this is my job. This is my fucking job, right? I bust my ass to get good content, to have quality people come on, have great topics of discussion. People want to watch it. People want to donate. People want to be Patreon. God bless you. That's how it is on the internet. But when I see people that have like 100,000 subs on YouTube that I think are disingenuous, I think that are putting out content that goes against, I think, of education, that puts out shit things. We have people that are flat earthers of 100,000 people, right? That are putting out misinformation, gross misinformation. That to me is grifting and dishonest, because I think they believe that, I think they know that they're full of shit. I think they don't believe in it a second, right? That to me I would call grifting, because they're trying to make money off dishonest ways. I'm only trying to earn a living.
So, Steve, real quick. So you have said that it is okay with me to reveal the full amount.
Yes, fine.
Okay, you started the channel. It looks like on or about early July of 2017.
Right. Yeah.
It looks like early July 2017, and since early July 2017, your total amount that you have earned is $584.
Wow, gravy train, people! I'm gonna be tired. What the hell am I doing with you slobs, man? Be gone, peasants. I'm telling you, this narrative that I made money off other people's backs is just asinine as fuck, man. My channel has gotten semi-popular only recently because of obviously reasons.
There's a couple of log tips and some of the more recent.
Yeah, there's some ticks, right? But for years,
it's an interesting
I was getting by. But I don't know how that's a gravy train off the work
Steve,
of other people's
you'd be
backs.
rich if you lived in Ethiopia. You're ignoring that, Steve
That's true.
McRae.
I would be living like a king in Ethiopia, right?
Yeah. Oh, you see, he just admitted it. He's cheating. He's stealing from people.
I mean, what do you got to say about that? I mean, do you see the type of fuckery that I have to go through?
Type of fuckery.
You're not the only person that deals with this shit.
I deal with the same fuckery.
Yeah,
it's amusing. Everybody deals with it. I mean, to some extent, if you're a content creator, someone's going to call you a grifter, and at the same time say that you're not successful enough. Why is that? Oh, it's because you suck.
You're not successful enough. I'm at the level that I expect to be right now. I've had people tell me, Steve, you're going to be a lot higher, and I keep telling them, this is where I expect to be at this time, based upon where I'm at in life.
Right.
A year from now might be doubled, right? I am not overreaching. I'm not under. I'm comfortable in that range I think I'm at right now. Mm-hmm. Now, do I want my channel to get more popular? Yeah, who doesn't, right? I mean, but that's 90%.
You don't feel entitled to it.
No, I'm not entitled to it. I want people to watch because they like the content.
I talked to a lot of content creators, and some of them are humble, right? Like me, like I have a channel that's got 26,000 subscribers. Go subscribe to Hypebreak, right? So, and I'll
shameless
be putting
plug.
out content. Yeah, shameless plug. But I know it's like dead at the moment because I've uploaded one video in the past 3 weeks. That's the reason why.
You don't do much
so
on
I
YouTube
don't expect
anymore.
to be successful, right? And I see some creators, and some of them are friends of mine. I'm not going to drop names here because it's kind of insulting to them. But they make good content, but they don't put it out enough. They don't understand the algorithm, or they're not willing to play that game. And then they complain. They're like, "Oh, why am I not popular? Why is this other guy who's making terrible content? Why is he so popular?" Well, because he understands the game. You don't. Or if you do understand it, you
analytic. You got to hit that analytic.
And then you complain about it. You gotta play the analytics. You gotta play the game. You gotta follow the rules. That's it. It's all it's all a system. Work that system, and you will be successful. Don't complain about how you're not successful. Oh, the system's biased against people who actually make content. The system doesn't care. The system does not give a shit. Just work the system. Don't complain about it.
And I got no issue with that. I try to put out 2 or 3 videos a week for the analytics. I recognize that. You have to. And by the way, I haven't really hit that sweet spot by any means yet. What happens is if people start sharing your videos, that's what YouTube notices. That URL, all those things are traced. All the things are linked. This was Video IQ picks up and all that. So when people share these videos, that's when YouTube starts to recommend them more. When they share that link.
Yep. Well, and I think what we're talking about, I think one of the things that Steve is trying to do is, instead of having the search for subs drive content, he's hoping the content is going to drive the subs, which is a really stupid way of doing it if you're trying to get lots of subs. But it's a good way. You have quality content, and presumably, too, the subs will stick around longer because they actually really like what it is you're doing.
I just did the math real quick. I'm not going to release my total number this particular channel now, but I will release this because I've been on 7 years. I've earned on the average less than 2,000 hours a year on this particular channel. over the 7 years.
If I may say something, we've been discussing this
how is that the gravy train, by the way? If it's 7 years, I'm averaging less than $2,000 a year. I'm sorry. I know people that make $50,000 a year off YouTube, $30,000 a year, $20,000 a year. I have averaged $2,000 a year. I don't see how that's gravy train. For the amount of effort and work I put in.
have to say this, Steve, just so you're aware, and just from a legal perspective, because you've been saying a lot that maybe you want to be a little careful, I want to point out in the last 5 minutes, you have released probably 100,000 times more of your books than some other channels have a tendency to do. So I'm just letting you know, all of a sudden you let your books out, and I've been told that can be a problem. So just watch the books because you don't want to release them because apparently there's a problem with that.
Yeah, by the way, these aren't these financials, not the books. Books
are completely different. You've released more books than such. I'm just saying it's more.
But anyways,
this is more
I know we're wrapping this up soon. I like to keep this on 2 hours.
Yeah.
So in time, you guys are great. Like I said, expect great things.
Thank you.
We're going to be Nick and I had talked about doing a show tomorrow on Ask a Philosopher.
Yep.
I think maybe we can push it back to next week only because
I like that. Let's do that. Let's do that.
This Saturday, I'm going to show my stuff out. Then we'll turn it over to Ian here. This Saturday, Cheshire, Unirock, and Red's Rhetoric will be on Drunken Peasants. And they're going to be talking about G-Man winning his actual real estate. Now, I have a self-imposed gag order as of opposed to a couple days ago. I will not be talking about any legal matters. Good reasons why. Okay, things are very, very good right now. So I am just not going to be doing anything on DP or any other platform, discuss anything related to anything kind of legalities. They can say whatever they want. And by the way, if you ask Reds, Cheshire, or Unirock, I've been telling them, you do your right. Now, I tell them don't release things I've told them in public or private that eventually will be public, obviously, documents. Terrible. But everything else is, they're free to have any opinion they want.
And may I quickly say one thing? We on In Time did a story recently on some legal matters, and I want to point out that I do appreciate that we were able to get some information that was very helpful. And we would like to extend an offer to any side that feels they were not properly represented, who would like to discuss with us any matters regarding that story or any other matters we have not properly covered. We would love to. So if somebody wants to get a hold of us, we would be very interested in discussing it with them. And I do think we do our very best to be fair and balanced. I think both of us have that reputation, and we intend on.
And that's a good reputation to have. That's what I want. I pride myself on this channel myself because when these trolls come after me, they're fighting against a very large body of evidence that my reputation means something to me, and I live by a code of ethics that I have sacrificed because of my code of ethics. Because I'd rather lose subs and do what I think is right than jump on these bandwagons and try to condemn people just because, I don't like the particular person or this person did that. The whole cancel culture that we're talking about. So that was a good full circle. So Ian, why don't you wrap it up for this? And by the way, I'm thankful that you came on. I'm sure this episode is going to get some shit. Whatever.
I'm sure it will.
But you know what? I've told you before, I consider you a friend, but that doesn't affect my bias. As far as I will hold you accountable, just as like I would anybody else. But I side with you because I have been objective. I have done my due diligence. That's why I tend to be siding with you.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
You want to wrap it up for us?
How would you like me to wrap it up? I mean, what do you want me to say?
Anything. Promote your shit.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll be resuming my YouTube channel. It's it's gaming stuff. It's Hype Break. Hype Break. It's like youtube.com/Hype Break. And you can also check out my work on humanevents.com. I'm the managing editor. It's run by Will Chamberlain. He's doing an amazing job. I think we've all been doing an amazing job over there. It's about current day politics. It's and we want to change the discussion. We're not a news site. I'm sure you saw some like news posts before, but we're not a news site. We're all about, having very thoughtful, articulate articles that I hope you enjoy. We talk about politics, we talk about culture. So, check it out, check us out. And definitely, if you like what I'm saying here, or if you're just interested, maybe you want to have a discussion with me, right? You can hit me up on Twitter at StillGray.
There you go. And by the way, I like that about you as well. You're really to discuss the issues, the controversial issues. But I will leave this with everybody. And one super chat, Grokester, $2. Subs overrated. What matters is views and super chats.
Can I add
yeah, go ahead.
one final point on
Yes.
the cancel culture thing?
Yes.
I think one of the most dangerous parts of cancel culture is not the way that it treats the people who create, and work in our society. I think the greatest threat of cancel culture is the way it now attempts to excise the past works of people based on something
that's a good
they may have
point.
done.
That's a good point. Oh yeah, screw this person and with their science stuff because they are accused of this.
Yes, or art, or science, any contribution, even founding fathers who, yes, by today's standard, they were horrible people, but still, they left us some amazing things that we should be proud of and are still important to who we are as a country or who we are as a society today. And I think that is far more dangerous than just ruining people's lives.
Yeah.
H.P. Lovecraft, right? He created horror. He created the cosmic horror genre. He's canceled because he has or had opinions that nowadays would be considered racist.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. Thank you. I know what you're referring to. That to me boggles my mind. Look at there's some great literatures like Huckleberry Finn, and things.
Yeah.
I mean, other stories that I had to read in high school that considered to be racist or use the N-word or something like that. These were literatures, and now like Wizard of Oz canceled because it deals with witches. It portrays a witch as good. That kind of stuff just drives me freaking nuts. I cannot deal with that. But because again, there's something called descriptive moral relativism. Not saying that morality was back then acceptable. I mean, back then slavery was still wrong. But again, a lot of people didn't understand that to be the case, right? So you have to look at it from their point of view. So it doesn't affect the fact that they were great writers or great scientists or things of that nature. So Ansgard, I totally agree with you on that. Jen Morgan says for $5, here's your cut of my retirement check. More maybe later, I hope, depending on how the hooking goes this month. Harvest time.
Oh my God.
There you go, man. So I just got $5 from illegal. What would it be prostitution? Oh, great. There you go. By the way, I have no affiliation with Trump. So doesn't he have prostitution rings or something or other? Anyways, guys, thanks for watching this. Ian, I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having
I want
me
you
on.
back, man. If you don't mind, just when you get bored, stop by for a rum and coke, or if you want something you want to talk about, here you go, man. Come on. You're welcome back anytime, okay?
I'm down. Absolutely. I'll hit you.
All right, guys, go sub to In Time, and we really appreciate you watching. Like, subscribe, do all that shill stuff, because that's what we do here. Bye. Hit the bell! Notifications that don't work. Good night.